Shalom and welcome to our podcast, Expanding Your Vision. And this week, as we seek to look in the times, we are looking toward the festival of Pesach and Hag HaMatzot. So this is coming up in a few days is Passover, a seminal event in the history of the life of the Lord and his restoration, his tikkun olam, his fixing of the breach of the world and restoration to its fullness. And as we've been talking about, the bringing back of the garden in its full expression, returning to the Garden of Eden and us having access to that again. We believe to some extent he's removed the angels with the fiery swords, that we would have access to it because of the work of the Messiah. And he has opened that way to us, but it is yet to come even in more of a fullness. But for now, that we get to interact with it in any way is much better. And the fact that there's not the angels with the fiery swords waiting to take us out, even better. So the revelation of this week is what we're walking in deliverance and removal of leaven. These are the hot topics for us.
It is. And whenever you were talking, the scripture says that the veil rent,
yes,
or the veil was torn. And so that's really why those angels are no longer there, is because he opened up the way for us now to enter into that garden relationship with his Father.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Which is, has been the goal ever since being removed from the garden, to find, to create the circumstances that would bring us back there. And everything has led to that and through that. And again, there's more to come, but certainly we have made some great strides that he's allowed in that to come back.
Right, and so I was reading something, and even from Chabad, and there's from biblical culture, and then Jewish Bible Quarterly, and all of them was talking about that the Garden of Eden in the beginning was considered a tabernacle, or a place, or a sanctuary. Yeah. So once again, we talked about it last week in our podcast about everything that Adam was doing. He's working in the garden. It's symbolic of what the priest did in the first tabernacle and the second one. And so there's been times in history when the Lord has wanted to repair us, that we wouldn't have to continue to go through things. If we would all just come to that place and do what we need to do. It's kind of like the 12 spies who went in, and the 10 came back with a bad report. They came back with, the Lord wanted them to, because if you remember, in Leviticus, they're going to be at this foot of the mountain for about 2 years. Right. And so at the end of Leviticus, they are, as we go into Numbers, they are 11 days, and that's found in Deuteronomy, that they're 11 days from entering the Promised Land. And that would have been the repair, right? Yeah. Tikkun olam?
Yes.
In a sense.
In a sense.
And so, but no, we're not going to do that.
We would not enter it.
And so, throughout history, in the scriptures, the Lord has brought us to a point where I really do want to restore this back. And he, of course, had a long-term plan because he knew what we were going to do. Yeah. But I think it's symbolic of our life is, where are we delaying from going to doing the things that the Lord wants to bring fullness to our life, and we're just afraid to step in that water, kind of like Nakshan.
Yeah.
Nakshan
was not afraid.
He was not afraid. Everybody else was afraid
at
the Red Sea. Yeah. So I might go ahead and kind of start at that, and then we can proceed on. Is that because I wanted to bring some things up for the calendar, and it's believed that first of all, in 1314 BCE, 1 year before the Exodus, Moshe was shepherding the flocks of his father-in-law Jethro at the foot of the mountain Sinai, when God appeared to him in a thorn bush that burned with fire but was not consumed. After arguing for 7 days, I don't know where they got that, but for 7 days, which is, I mean, it's a biblical number.
Yeah.
Moshe finally accepted his mission to return to Egypt to redeem the people of Israel and bring them to Sinai. So then 2 weeks in 1313 BCE, 2 weeks before the exodus of Egypt, so we have Moshe arguing for 7 days, okay, and then he's obedient. And so 2 weeks before the exodus from Egypt, God instructed Moshe regarding the lunar months of the Jewish calendar and taught the commander the mitzvah of sanctifying the new month. And so that's where we are. We still do the civil calendar in Tishrei when the world began, but then so that's a physical birth, and then we come to Nisan, and it's a spiritual birth, or rebirth is what I'm going to say. And so that's how that all got changed. And then there's a part where in some sages teach that in the 6th night after the Passover, after they left Egypt, which would be 7 days, that Bnei Israel was gripped in the clutches of fear as they were pinned in on all sides. So this is where Nakshan comes in. Okay.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, after 7 days, we're at the Red Sea. Okay. The gates to the sea and the prison cells open. So the line of Judah, which that's the tribe that Nakshan was from, everybody was fretting and stuff, everybody was afraid to cross in or to go in, but it's taught that Nakshan jumped in and the seas parted. We kind of see that at the Jordan River as well. You know, it wasn't until the priests stepped in. So not to say that that's the truth, but there is a pattern there. So that's what we wanted to. So remember, in Exodus 12, the Lord tells us He wants us to observe and to remember 4 days. The first one is Nisan 1, which we talked about a couple of weeks ago, and it was about when on the 8th day, which in that time was Nisan 1, that was when Aaron and his sons and the tabernacle, the first tabernacle, was inaugurated, and their service was inaugurated. So that's Nisan 1. Okay, then there was Nisan 10, which is the Lamb Selection Day, which we talked about last week. And so then the 14th, of course, is Passover, which is coming in a few days. And then it says the 21st of Nisan. And so for a few years, I couldn't figure out what the 21st day was. But actually, according to this, the 21st day of Nisan would have been when Nakshan jumped in and the sea parted. And then they crossed over in one night, and then they came up on Nisan 23rd. And so that's what we. And so if you really look at it, there's 8 days, and there's both the spring feast has 8 days, and the fall feast, Sukkot, has 8 days, and each one of those days. The 8th day is a day of dancing and singing and celebration, because it is believed that Isaac, right? If you remember, we talked about last week or the week before about Isaac being born in the month of Nisan, and so it's believed that he was born on Passover, or Pesach, and that he was circumcised on the 23rd. So I know this is a lot of information, and I really, you can look it up about, what all happens in whatever month it is, but that's part of what Scott and I are about, is walking in the times and the seasons. And when we know what the months mean, it can this is I think the month of the mouth where a lot of stuff is spoken.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we start looking at the things that happen, there's an energy, there's a power, there's an infusion, and I know I kind of want to try to steer away from the word portal, but it's, I mean, if you look at it as it's from heaven, down, it's something that the Lord wants to flow out to us and upon us. Yeah. And so it's just, it's interesting to find out what really happened. And then again, we've listed, if you remember, in Numbers, it talks about the tribes bringing in an offering to the tabernacle, and so we've kind of gone over all those days. Well, today's the 11th of Nisan, and Asher would be bringing in his offering, and day 12 is Naphtali. And so, anyway, it's just important to not only look at what the months, the energy and the things that each month has, but also the days of things that happened. It's just bringing us more into the Word. And then when you're reading the Word throughout, then dates are going to be popping up. And names aren't just names, places aren't just places, numbers aren't just numbers, times isn't just times. And so he wants us to bring us in. And I'm telling you, this last, couple of months, there has been an outpouring of God's revelation. Mm-hmm. And one of those revelations brought me into closer, because we are coming up on a Passover. Mm-hmm. Enter that Passover, because it is a rehearsal. And we talked about this last week. It's a rehearsal. It's a rehearsal to the wedding supper of the Lamb. And we kind of associated that to Yeshua's last Seder, where he lifted up the fourth cup but didn't drink it. Right. And said he's going to drink it
when he comes in his Father's kingdom.
That's right.
So drink it anew.
It's going to be a banquet of some sort.
And it has that sort of betrothal atmosphere to it. When you look at a lot of people have overlaid much of his last days and prophetically over the Jewish wedding customs and how that's lived out and how that was lived out before he came here as a man. But you look at Matthew 26, he says something that the bridegroom would say at the betrothal before he goes away. He says, while they were eating, Yeshua took a piece of matzah, unleavened bread. Again, that's the festival we're looking toward, and this is particularly toward the Passover aspect of Hag HaMatzot, the festival of unleavened bread. He made the blessing and broke it and gave it to his disciples and said, take, eat, this is my body. Also he took a cup of wine and made the blessing and gave it to them, saying, all of you drink from it. From this is my blood, which ratifies the Brit Chadashah, the new covenant, the renewed covenant, my blood shed on behalf of many so that they may have their sins forgiven. And I tell you, I will not drink this fruit of the vine again until the day I drink new wine with you in my Father's kingdom. So he will drink it with us. He's telling us prophetically, but again, this is very much the kind of pattern that would have followed at the betrothal ceremony. And again, it leads again to that prophetic nature of the wedding supper that we're rehearsing yet to come. So these things are a rehearsal of this night, giving it greater expression, because he's going away, but he will yet return. He goes away to build a place for us. So very much language of betrothal and how the life will be together in union. And so he is recording all that. And that's how we say that this is living in the times, because these ceremonies and these events are rehearsals of greater things to come. It's not just literally about them gathering and eating and celebrating, even here in his case, celebrating the Passover. That was necessary. That was part of life. That was part of that night. But he's also telling of what's yet to come, even more, even less veiled, saying, when I come again and drink it with you in my Father's kingdom. So these kinds of events are foretelling what's coming later, and they're having an intermediate manifestation. And part of that, we talk about it, is it's understanding. And we deal with these kinds of concepts all the time. We know when we have a certain expectation of when the tide comes in and when the tide goes out, and the cycle of the moon, and when there's opportunities of different temperatures that we could leverage, and people aren't planting, strawberries in the middle of winter storms, because they understand there's better times to do that. Could you possibly do it? Yeah, you possibly could, and it might work out, but there's better times to do it. And that's why we bring this up, because if we understand the workings of the Spirit and how these kinds of patterns have been laid out through the revelation of the festivals and the feasts, and even how, given through Ezra, the Torah portions have been laid out weekly, it gives us an idea when it's better to do those things. Is it always a good time to seek salvation and deliverance and healing? Yeah, it's always a good time for that. But, around Yom Kippur, to really seek that restoration and forgiveness, and to be cleaned, and to repent and seek atonement, that's a great day. We're really going to, the flow for that to happen is much better on that day than any other day. But it's always a good idea to seek those things and try and clean those things up. This here, where we're looking at this, we talked about the Shovavim a few months ago, and we talk about here where we're getting ready for the festival of unleavened bread. Again, it's not just talking about circumcision of the body, it's ultimately about circumcision of the heart when it deals with circumcision. We're not just talking about leaven in the world, we're talking about leaven in ourselves, in our actions, in our thoughts, how we conduct our business. There's better times in a lot of different aspects of life to do things, but it doesn't mean you can't do it at those other times. It just means it might be more difficult to attain, or the percentage of success might be a little bit mitigated, but it still can be successful. So we're leveraging the idea in this season coming up, especially, that looking to clean up the leaven and looking to restore our households and mend relationships and these kinds of community aspects. We're looking to leverage the flow of energy in that way, of the flow of life, which is at a higher and faster pace at this point.
Yeah, I can remember in my younger years, that, most everybody had a family Bible in your house. You had a dictionary.
Right.
And then you had a farmer's almanac.
Yeah, exactly.
And, if you really think about it, I have to go back and look, but that farmer's almanac, a lot of that had to do with the phases of the moon.
Okay. I didn't remember that.
There was times in there that they said was good to plant crops.
Absolutely
and,
right. They definitely gave,
right.
encouragement towards certain things.
Right. Right. And, another thing that I wanted to bring up, because you're talking about betrothal and the Seder being a rehearsal dinner for the wedding supper of the Lamb. And so it would, and I know that I've encouraged people before that to study the wedding customs of the ancient Jewish wedding customs, because at a Seder we have 4 cups. That comes from Exodus 12 or right around in there. He has declarations and all of that. But then in John 14, it says, "Let not," and this is the scripture that grabbed my heart and set me on the path that I'm on now, probably back in 99 or 2000. But it says, "Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you, and I will come again and receive you to myself.
Yes.
And where I go, and where I am, there you may also be. And where I go, you know, and the way you know." And then he goes on and talks about that he is the way, the truth, and the life. But that phrase, "I go to prepare a place for you," is a betrothal term. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
I mean, that's very much the custom. I mean, the idea of the groom, their responsibility to provide shelter and sustenance and all the necessities of sustaining life. They wouldn't just get married and then figure it out. They had to provide that safe environment for the bride. And they would go and do that. They would get everything ready and prepare so that all was in place, instead of, sort of, I guess, roughshod making it work as they went along. That had to be in place. I mean, of course, a lot of married couples have ups and downs and provisions and things like that, and better crop years and lesser crop years. But at least to get started, the provision needed to be there. And it wasn't even just at the groom's decision. It was the father of the groom's understanding and observation and insight to judge the situation. And then the father would decide when everything is as it should be, and then would send the son, who's the groom, to go retrieve their bride.
And that groom didn't know, so when Yeshua says, I don't know the day or the hour, because he truly doesn't, because he's waiting for his father to give the approval.
Yes.
I know in 1990, I went on a short-term mission trip to Spain, and this one lady that was kind of our guide, she was engaged to a man. So a lot of the foreign countries do the same thing.
Yes.
Is that until the groom-to-be has a house provided for his bride, and well established in his job, then they couldn't get married.
Right.
So it's not just so, I mean, that goes into other cultures as well.
Right.
And so it probably would behoove us to really slow down in our relationships.
Right.
And that's the one thing that I want us to when we went into this book of Leviticus, which we've taken a little bit of break from the Torah portions, but Leviticus is all about relationship.
Right.
And then we come into this Passover season, and what bigger statement of relationship could be said that our Messiah was willing to be crucified for us.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, talking about relationship, he was willing to give it all up for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's once again, it's not by happenstance that we're having Passover during the book of Leviticus.
Right.
It's appointed.
It's appointed. Yeah.
And here we are in the midst of the sacrifices and all of the nuts and the bolts of it all.
Mm-hmm.
And here Yeshua, all of those nuts and bolts come together for us in Yeshua.
Mm-hmm.
And he's showing us what Leviticus is really about.
Right. And you look at Leviticus as it shows up during this, again, as we were talking about, the beginning of the spiritual new year. The beginning of the spring feast. It's in the Vayikra, Leviticus 1:1, the first portion of that shows up the week of Nisan 1. Or Nisan 1, Rosh Chodesh of Nisan 1 will show up during that week of the portion of the Torah. And there's that separateness, there's that holiness, and that's there in Leviticus, and historically in the Hebrew world, it is the place of beginning to start to study the scriptures. Actually, it's the place of beginning to start to learn to read and to write.
What is it, from a 3 or up to a 5?
3, yeah, 3 to 5. And so that early, that's where they start. And a lot of people come to the Lord and they start looking at other places, but this is where the Lord, one of the reasons is, the main reason is, this is where holiness is taught.
Right.
Because we don't understand it. And to understand why holiness is important, the Lord has these signs in place. One, it's the center book of the books of Moses. There's 2 books before, 2 books after. And the center verse of the whole Torah occurs in the middle of Leviticus. And it refers to Moses looking for the sin sacrifice. So again, a key thing we should be looking toward. The center scripture says we should be looking for the sin offering. The other aspect that's a signpost with it is that the word Torah, and the letters are 49 letters apart, Torah, is spelled out. Torah, going from Genesis through Exodus, every 49th letter spells that word, pointing to the book of Leviticus, Vayikra, and coming back from Deuteronomy and Numbers, pointing toward Leviticus. It is Torah backwards, is pointing that way, leading to there. And then there's an equidistant combination that spells out the Yud He Vav He throughout the book of Leviticus. So there are signposts in just the architecture of how it's written down in the Torah scroll that demonstrates the centrality, not abovely in importance, but a real strong foundational focus, like through this lens you should look at things. We should look at the rest of the scriptures and learn from that. But again, this is where we learn holiness, and it seems to be a bit archaic to us, and it's a bit foreign to us. We haven't had this process lived out in front of us in centuries. So, but to recoil from it, I'd say kind of push through that, because there is an initial, it's laborious to get through, and so people are kind of dissuaded, well, we'll skip over that, and I'm never going to be that person anyway. But we really can give insight in how we can interact with the world and help Hashem restore this by what happens here.
Right. And I don't know, and actually, Leviticus is a companion to the book of Hebrews.
Yes.
And so if you are reading Hebrews, you're probably not going to understand it in its, fullness until you start reading Leviticus.
Yeah.
And so, and once again, just think about this, is that Yeshua was, I'm gonna say 5 years old. It could be 3, but 5.
Right.
So Yeshua is 5 years old, and his parents, Mary and Joseph, sit him down and began to teach him, our Messiah, to read. And the first book that he reads is Leviticus, which describes what he is later going to become.
I mean, it's amazing to think that actually lived out in that way. And that's how it happened. So using those kind of guides and seeing that, as Mark said, everything that Yeshua did is a parable, and everything he taught was a parable. So all these events are parables on what's coming and how things will look at some point. And obviously, like the time of Passover, there was a tremendous revelation and manifestation of that night where the people launched the Exodus, the Passover lamb, and it delivered them. But to whatever extent the Lord would allow, we'll have those same revelations like that. And just to kind of contrast it against, there's usually a counterfeit, and you could see things where people look at other signposts to live in the times, and early on in Genesis we're admonished not to look at the stars and the planet alignments and the constellation to give us guidance on when to do certain things and when to act and when to hold back and when to start new projects and when to hold back. Whatever we're considering, in 1 Thessalonians, Shaul talks about 1 Thessalonians 5, but you have no need to have anything written to you, brothers, about the times and dates when this will happen. Because what he's referring to in the times and dates, and it's more commonly, I think I hear times and seasons, where we understand what he's saying, he's talking about living in the times, because they understand living in the times. They understand Passover, they understand Yom Teruah, they understand Shavuot, and these kinds of celebrations, and what's focused in on those, and what's the ebb and flow of that. When we look at it, people use this patterns in the stars to make decisions on when to buy a house or start a new business. But that's living in the times in the way we're told not to live. Don't use those things as your guideposts. But as far as his seasons and his appointed festivals and his Torah portions, we can very much glean what's appropriate, what's lesser, what's going to be more successful.
Yes, and of course we all know that there's tons of stuff's going on in our day. And,
absolutely.
It is kind of pointing to, yeah, and I can't remember which book it was. I think it was John maybe wrote, and and one of those people, maybe it was Peter, but talked about, well, the hour is near. And I'd say, well, if the hour was near then, we're down to minutes. And so it's really time to rededicate our lives and to, once again, these feasts and festivals give us an opportunity to once again keep searching, and it just never ends. It just never ends.
Yeah, and I think we're really at the time where, again, these are living in the times. I mean, were these things true 1,000 years ago, or 850 years ago, 500 years ago? Yeah, they were. But Gabriel is told to tell Daniel that in the end of days, in the Acharit Hayamim, that there will be knowledge of increase, and knowledge itself will increase, and people will travel to and fro. And we certainly can see those things. For the last 100 years, people have traveled more to and fro in shorter times than have ever happened, that anybody has good awareness of. And it's the same thing with we're watching in the last 60 years or more, the knowledge and how fast it's increasing and the way it's increasing. So for us to leverage that and uncover that where people haven't had opportunity to do, again, the encouragement to do it is there for us.
Right. So do you have any, keep in mind, now your Seder is?
Ours is going to be on Thursday evening at sunset, April 2nd, 2026.
And that's at Children of Jacob?
Yes, and it's as you can come, there's no tickets, but there is a space allotment, so if you want to attend, please just give us a call or an email or text us, just to communicate it. And we're trying to provide space and arrange everything safely.
Right, yeah. And ours is also at 6 o'clock on Thursday evening. Thursday?
Thursday evening.
Yeah.
The Passover itself is at the Seder. The first Seder is Wednesday night at sunset.
Right.
Yeah,
and so then ours is in Branson at a community center. So you can always go to arkinthewilderness.com, and we are doing tickets so that we could see, make sure that we have enough for everybody. So we're all excited. And once again, approach this day in awe and anticipation and this is a rehearsal, I want to get it right.
It's revelation to come.
That's right.
We're preparing.
It's all about preparation. All about preparation. And so the next time we meet, we'll be counting the Omer.
We're counting the Omer.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us. Look forward to it. Shalom.